Hi guys, welcome back. Now we're going to be discussing the pivotal shifts in this video, and it's going to be a short video. We're going to quickly wrap this up as this is the last thing that we need to discuss for this topic. And this is the same slide that you can see on your screens that we had discussed when we were discussing the shifts in PPC outwards and inwards. Now guys, as far as a pivotal shift in PPC is concerned, is a pivotal shift in PPC occurs that whenever there is a change in the production capacity of only one good, right? Without a change in the production capacity of the other. So usually students do end up writing when there's an increase in productive capacity of one good, but they forget to mention with that you also have to mention that without a change in the production capacity of the other, right? And the reason why these pivotal shifts occurs is because of improvements in technology, or number one reason is usually improvements in technology, or there is an increase in resource efficiency. That is the efficiency or the factors of production, that is the quality of the factors of production causing a increase in their efficiency, which is related specifically to one of the goods, right? So if your PPC is pivoting outwards like this, so there's an increase in resource efficiency for producing good X. Maybe the labor is more productive. The labor that basically produces good X is becoming more productive, or there's a technological advancement in the production of good X. So for example, all these factors that we had discussed for outward shift in PPC is basically relevant only for good X. So that is why the PPC for good X will pivot outwards. So for example, there's an improvement in the human and physical capital for producing good X. So there's, the labor becomes more productive, or this technological advancement or infrastructure improvements that are very much specific to the production of good X. So PPC will shift outwards for good X. Similarly, if there's a decline, there's a technological regression, or there is a decline in your productive, for instance, workers that end up producing good X is emigrating with an E abroad. They're moving out of the country. Brain drain of the workers that produce good X, or there's a decline in productivity, or there's a decline in resource efficiency that is relevant to producing good X, the PPC will pivot inwards. So this is how you will draw the PPC, pivoting inwards and outwards, and you can see that the productive capacity, so the maximum good X that you could initially produce was X1, and now it falls to X2. Sorry, it increases to X2. Similarly, initially you were able to produce, let's say, X1, but now you can produce less, that is X2 here, right? So you can produce less now, and when the PPC is pivoting outwards, you can produce more. And the way how you need to draw this is just a quick rough. I'm going to tell you that for example, if this is your production possibility curve, and you need to show that the capacity for good X is going up, so this is how you will pivot it outwards. This is the reason. This is how you need to pivot it outwards, because this is indicating that if this is good Y, that the maximum amount for good Y is still the same, right? You could still produce Y1. Initially, you could produce Y1, the maximum Y1 or the maximum X1, but now you can still produce a maximum. You can still only produce a maximum Y1, but you can produce more good X, that is X2, the maximum. So either you could make Y1 or you could make X2 now. Previously, you could make either Y1 or if all resources were on X diverted to producing X, then the maximum that you could make was X1, right? So this is how you need to pivot it, inwards and outwards. And it's not only the fact that PPC could also be the productive capacity for good Y going up or down. So for example, in this scenario, if the productive capacity for good Y is increasing, then this is how you need to show it, right? This is again showing the capacity for good Y going up, increasing. You could produce the maximum Y that you could end up making was Y1, but now you can make Y2, which is more. So this is an increase in the capacity for good Y, right? It's showing that the maximum that you could make for good Y is Y. But you don't need to make the arrow like this. Just you can write it in the exam on the side box here that the maximum we could produce was Y1, but now the maximum we can produce is Y2. Right? But you can show a small arrow inside shifting of PPC, pivoting PPC outwards, right? And similarly, this is showing an inward pivot of PPC. This is showing that your capacity to produce good Y was this much, but now it is only this much, right? So this is a pivot of PPC for good Y inwards. So when you say that your PPC is pivoting outwards, I mean basically in graphical terms, a pivotal shift would basically represent the PPC pivoting outwards from one axis, right? So the PPC is pivoting outwards from one axis, which is indicating an increased capability to produce the good on that axis. We can see that the PPC has pivoted outwards on on the x-axis, in representing the increased capability to produce the good on that axis, that is the horizontal axis, while the capability or the capacity or the potential to produce the good on the other axis, that is good Y, remains unchanged. And the most common cause of the pivotal shift inwards or outwards is technological advancement. Especially if you're talking about outwards, it's technological advancement in the production process of one good. Maybe let's say if in the agricultural sector, let's say if good X is agricultural sector, then the development of a new harvesting technology, right? You end up developing the economy ends up development of a new harvesting technology could significantly increase the yield, the crop yield, right? Again, pivoting the PPC outwards for the representing an enhanced capacity for the agricultural sector, without really affecting the other sectors in the economy, right? And so usually, for instance, if the government is making some sort of you can say targeted investments in one of the sectors, such as maybe the government is subsidizing the research and development expenditures in renewable energy technology, right? So again, the government supporting R&D into renewable energy technology can enhance the production capabilities in that particular sector, in the sector for renewable energy. It's not the subsidies that is increasing. It's not the subsidies that is causing that enhancement. It's the subsidies targeted towards R&D expenditure, research and development. So the research and development expenditure would increase the production capacity in the renewable energy technology sector, which will cause a pivotal shift outwards in that sector in the PPC, right? And when your PPC, by the way, shifts outward, as far as the opportunity cost is concerned, the opportunity cost for if you see that in this case, if I ask you, is the opportunity cost for producing good X going up or down, then what would your answer be? What would you think that the opportunity, if you look at this diagram, the PPC is pivoting outward for good X, so what do you think would be the answer as far as the opportunity cost for producing good X is concerned? And the reason is that here basically the opportunity cost for producing good X is going down, and the reason is that initially you had to forego this much Y for producing this much X, right? But now you have to forego the same amount of Y for producing so much more of X, right? So you can actually produce more of X now by foregoing the same amount of Y, right? Which simply means that the opportunity cost for producing good X is going down, right? And the reverse would happen if the PPC for good X pivoted inwards. The reverse would happen if the PPC for good X had pivoted inwards, right? Because that would mean that you had to forego this much Y for initially producing this much X, but now you have to forego the same Y for producing less of X. So the opportunity cost of producing good X would increase in this case, right? And so, there are a lot of real world examples, especially in 2024, that you could end up giving, because these days, there has been, if you see that, there has been a significant advancement in solar technology, which has pivoted the PPC outward for the energy sector. So if you have on the x-axis, this is representing the energy sector in the economy, then the advancement in solar technology would pivot the PPC outwards for the energy sector. Yeah, right. Especially increasing the production possibilities for renewable energy. because this will then allow, obviously this will allow the countries to produce more electricity from solar power without increasing the inputs required significantly, right? So essentially you're able to get more output for the same or fewer inputs, right? So definitely your capacity is going up. And so and so this sort of an advancement in solar technology has also led to a greater focus these days on renewable energy, especially as governments take up and discuss this on international forums, because they have sort of tried to, countries around the world have tried to reform their national energy policies, and countries are basically allocating more resources, and so what we're saying is that a lot of countries have reduced the investments in coal and natural gas, and they have sort of pivoted their investments towards solar energy these days. And so the fact that there's a rapid expansion of the solar energy industry, which is also shifting the PPC for solar energy outwards, this will also have significant macroeconomic impacts, because what will happen is that it will then create numerous jobs in the manufacturing sector, right? Numerous jobs in manufacturing, installation and even the maintenance of these solar panels. So इसको कहते हैं basically हम बड़ी sector specific growth होती है. This is basically a very much, and this is the economic word, by the way, the sector specific growth, right? And this will also result into such a sector specific growth will is also causing the labor and capital to shift away from more traditional energy sectors like coal and oil towards more renewable energy, towards more renewable energy sectors. And so, right, so this is what you need to know as far as your pivotal shift is concerned, that why could this particularly happen. And I hope you've understood this, and that's all for this video, guys. I'll see you all around in the next video. Until then, take care.